I've got a tiger by the tail, it's plain to see. I won't be much when you get through with me. Well, I'm a losing weight and I'm turning mighty pale. Looks like I've got a tiger by the tail. The eye of the tiger. Eye of the tiger.
The Oklahoma Sooners are the #1 ranked team in the country according to the Bowl Championship Series. They've been ranked #1 more times in the BCS than any team in college football. It will not mean a thing if they don't play well and if Missouri is on their game Saturday night. It'll be kind of like Ohio State last week where they were #1 in both major polls and it was one and done as Wisconsin beat them last Saturday. Oklahoma has to be ready for that trap in Columbia. It will be Oklahoma and Missouri. If you take aside the LSU and Auburn game this week, the game in Columbia, Missouri is the biggest in college football this week. OU will enter Columbia, Missouri as a 3-point favorite. By the way, the game can be seen Saturday night, 7 o'clock kickoff on ABC. 3-point favorite, the Sooners will be. It did open up initially at 3.5 points. Before we talk a little bit about the Sooners and the Tigers and this very important game, got to talk a little bit about Oklahoma's BCS ranking. As we mentioned, they are the #1 team according to the BCS, even though the coaches poll has them at #3 and the Harris poll has them at #4. Remember, the Associated Press does not participate in the BCS. But the computers are the reason why Oklahoma is #1. 4 of the 6 computer polls that the BCS uses has Oklahoma at #1. So that's why you see Oklahoma at the top of the BCS standings, and it's, in my opinion, deserved because of the fact when you compare them to the other undefeateds in the country, Oklahoma has had the toughest schedule. And as long as Florida State keeps winning, even though the Air Force lost this past week, if they can finish out the season consistent, if Cincinnati in a wide-open Big East conference can win that conference, makes Oklahoma look better. And Texas's win over Nebraska this past week, since Oklahoma had already beaten Texas, that helped Oklahoma's BCS ranking, culminated with the fact that Oregon State, who lost both to TCU and Boise, got beat this past week by Washington. That did not help Boise or TCU whatsoever in the computer rankings. So it would appear right now, even if Oklahoma can't hold that top ranking in the computers, I cannot see Oklahoma dropping below 2nd in the overall BCS standings so long as the Sooners take care of business every week. So yes, being #1, it's pressure, means you got a bullseye on your back, but at least your fate is in your own hands as of mid-October. But I'm going to use a prop for this one, ladies and gentlemen, because Oklahoma Sooner fans are already calling Glendale, Arizona, making hotel reservations for January's national championship game. This is my prop. As you can tell, this is a calendar. And I'm going to flip it to the month we're in right now, October. Because I want people to, and it's nice to be happy for my Sooners to be the #1 ranked team of the BCS. It makes you feel gratified. But to put things into reality and to not get too excited just yet about the national championship game and people saying, boy, I hope Boise State gets there so it can be a rematch of the greatest college football game of all time. Or I hope it's Oklahoma-Oregon because of the screw job in Eugene, Oregon 4 years ago where OU got ripped off. Those are fun things to think about. But here is where the calendar is going to come into play. 1, 2. We're going to count the number of college football weekends that are left between now and the end of the season. In October, there are 2 college football weekends left. Flip it to November. There are 4 weekends. And then there is that first weekend of December, which will be the weekend of the Big 12 championship game. So there are still 7 college football weekends left, ladies and gentlemen. That means there's going to be 7 more BCS polls to go. If you don't take care of business against Missouri, then your #1 BCS ranking is going to go up in flames. Take care of business each and every week. BCS is going to take care of itself. It's great to be number one, but you could lose it just as quickly as you attained it if you get caught too much in your own press clippings. So Oklahoma, let's worry about Missouri. Don't worry about the BCS. That's the point I wanted to make with that calendar. We're going to talk a little bit about the Sooners because this past weekend, I know it was against Iowa State, but did that look like the most complete ball game the Sooners have played all season long? Landry Jones just outstanding. 30 of 34 passing, 3 touchdowns. Ryan Broyles, school record for most catches in one game, had 15. DeMarco Murray, the record-breaking game with career touchdowns. He had 3 touchdowns, in fact, in that game, over 100 yards rushing. Roy Finch, the freshman phenom, came in the second half, rushed for nearly 100 yards. He is lightning fast, ladies and gentlemen. The Oklahoma offensive line thought it was the best game they'd played all year. And then the defense, can't say enough about those guys. Blanking the Cyclones, they had no rushing attack, couldn't really throw the ball either. Had very few plays, by the way, in Oklahoma territory. Hats off to Bob Stoops and that squad. They were prepared. The 2 weeks really, really helped between the Texas game and the ISU game. So 52-0. Couldn't be any happier for those guys. But now it's time to get ready for a Missouri squad, whom, just like Oklahoma this past week, maybe played their best game of the year. Went into College Station, you know, the 85,000 fans there at Kyle Field. Tough environment to win. We know how good A&M is at home. Well, Missouri had none of that because they won their game and they won it decisively. In fact, they held A&M to just 1 touchdown. And that really, in my opinion, has been the story for Missouri, their improvement on the defensive side. The game that Brad Madison had, their terrific defensive tackle, had 3 sacks in the contest. Jacquez Smith, another defensive tackle, he played well. And they did all this, keep in mind, without their best defensive lineman. That's defensive end Alden Smith, who broke a bone in his leg last month. Hasn't played for 3 games. Could, however, play this week against the Sooners. I hope we don't see him, because that's all you need is another weapon for Missouri to try to keep out of the Sooner backfield. But could play this week. Wouldn't be surprised if he did. But that's been the big improvement, has been the defensive line. Number 1 in the Big 12 in sacks. They've amassed 20 so far, and they've been very good against the run. Passing defense, Missouri's not the best in the Big 12, so hopefully Landry can have a big game and pick those guys apart. Offensively, Missouri looked good as well. Blaine Gabbert was not 100% entering that game health-wise, but still threw for over 300 yards and did this in College Station before the end of the 3rd quarter. Blaine Gabbert is making people forget more and more about Chase Daniel, the preceding quarterback at Missouri, who led the Tigers to back-to-back Big 12 North championships. Gabbert is making a name for his own self, and he's played well, despite the fact, again, that he was not 100% against A&M. Still had fantastic numbers. I would love some feedback from some Missouri fans, if any Mizzou fans happen to be watching this broadcast. Is this the biggest home game that Missouri has ever played? I've gone through recent memory, and I can't think of one that's bigger. Because Missouri's 11th, according to the BCS, undefeated. OU is number 1 in the BCS and undefeated. College Gameday is going to be there. ESPN College Gameday is going to be in Columbia that day. So you know it's big if ESPN has their crew of Chris Lee, Kirk, and Desmond, and Aaron Andrews all decked out at your joint to talk about the game. I can't think of a bigger game, home game, that Missouri has played except this one. So if there's one that's bigger than this, please let me know. But that's the biggest one that comes to my mind right away. Let's go ahead and talk about the 4 keys to the game. We've already talked about it earlier. Key number 1, offensive line for Oklahoma, do your job. In fact, I think this is the biggest key. If Oklahoma does this, the other 3 keys, they may not get A's in, but if they can get an A in this category, I think they'll win the game. If they do their job against that Missouri defensive line, then you've already won a big part of the battle. That would have meant that DeMarco Murray, Moses Madu, and Finch would have gotten terrific yardage running, and that also would have meant that you would have given Landry Jones time to throw, which, of course, Missouri's strength is getting to the quarterback. So, offensive line for Oklahoma, do your part, and the rest will take care of itself, and I really believe that. Number 2, defensive backs for Oklahoma, be ready. I'm not going to say you have to sack the quarterback 4 or 5 times defensive line, but at least try to get pressure. It won't be easy because Blaine Gabbert gets rid of the ball pretty quick. I saw that against A&M, that you don't have to give him a lot of time for him to get rid of the ball and be efficient. Just don't let anything get past you, defensive backs. I will expect Oklahoma to run a lot of nickel formation. That means Tony Jefferson, the freshman phenom nickelback, is going to get a lot of action. So really watch Tony Jefferson in this game for the Sooners. Number 3, red zone defense. If you don't know what the red zone is, that's inside the 20-yard line. We're talking about defending the red zone for both teams. Oklahoma's dead last in the Big 12 in red zone D, which means that when opponents get inside OU's 20, more times, a lot more times than not, in fact, only one time this year has an opponent who's gotten inside Oklahoma's 20 has not come away with points. It's not very good for Oklahoma. They need to shore that up. And Missouri, conversely, has been the opposite. They've been very efficient in red zone D. They've only given up 4 touchdowns inside their own 20-yard line. So they've been very good in that area. So really watch for red zone defense for both teams. And then number 4, finish the game strong. Against Air Force, against Cincinnati, against Texas, Oklahoma did not finish the game strong. And those games had more drama than necessary. Against Iowa State last week, it didn't really matter because Oklahoma was in control of that game. It was 38-0 entering the fourth quarter. At that point, OU had called off the Dogs. Oklahoma, I would expect them to be leading entering the fourth quarter, but I don't know how the game, to tell you the truth, is going to finish. If Oklahoma, let's say, is up by 14 or 17, can they maintain that dominance? We'll wait and see. Final thoughts on this game. Missouri, no question, is an improved squad. They're better than I thought, especially on the defensive side. They've got the home field advantage, and you know that field in Columbia is going to be crazy with it being prime time and with this game being so significant for both squads. I go with Oklahoma for the following reasons. Number 1, I don't know if Missouri is going to be able to run the ball. They're not a very good team running the ball. Derek Washington, their leading rusher from the past 2 years, it's a big reason why he's not on the team anymore. He got kicked off. So their running game hasn't been the same since. To beat Oklahoma, you're going to have to run and pass efficiently, not just be able to pass. And I feel pretty good about Oklahoma's defense in that regard as far as their chances. Plus, Oklahoma has played in more big games in the past. Biggest reason, though, why I take Oklahoma, Bob Stoops has never lost to the Tigers. A perfect 7-0. It doesn't matter if he plays them in Norman, in Columbia, or at a neutral site, which he's done twice in the 07 and 08 Big 12 championships and came away with big wins both times. Oklahoma knows how to beat Missouri. Should be a good game, though, but I look for Oklahoma to win 31-23 and to cover that 3-point spread. We'll talk about this game on the post-game show Sunday morning. And don't forget, later in this week, I'll pick 10 college football games against the spread, me and the almighty Penny, on the Big 12 matchups and then some. So hope to see you later in the week for that show as well. Boomer Sooner!